California's gas problem isn't just prices going up, it's bigger than that. It's about supply, refinery shutdowns, special California-only fuel, and a system so fragile that a delay on the Pacific Ocean can show up at your local pump almost immediately. Today, we're breaking down why losing 2 refineries changes everything, why California can't just buy gas from Texas, what experts say could happen to prices, how hundreds of gas stations are already closing, and why this could ripple into Arizona, Nevada, and even national security. You're watching Melissa Gray, and if you want more breakdowns that connect the dots without the fluff, tap subscribe right now so you don't miss the next update. And as you watch, I want you to do something. Comment where you live in California or the Southwest, and what you paid for gas last time, because your real-world numbers tell a story politicians can't spin. If you know someone commuting long distance, share this video with them, because what's coming hits commuters first. Let's start with the simplest part, because everything else is built on it. California consumes about 1.7 million barrels of gasoline per day. That's not a political opinion. That's the daily reality of a state where millions of people drive to work, haul goods, deliver food, and keep a massive economy moving. Before the refinery closures, California's in-state refineries could produce about 1.62 million barrels per day. Even then, the state wasn't fully self-sufficient. It already had to import roughly 100,000 barrels per day just to close the gap. That's the before. Now the after is where the pain begins. With Phillips 66 and Valero shutting down key facilities, California's refining capacity drops to about 1.34 million barrels per day. But demand doesn't magically drop with it. People still need to drive, businesses still need to ship, and emergency services still need fuel. So that import gap explodes from about 100,000 barrels a day to about 380,000 barrels a day. Think about what that means in real-life terms. California goes from importing a little to top off the tank to importing a huge chunk just to survive, nearly 4 times the previous import level. And when you increase dependence that fast, you don't just raise prices, you increase the odds of shortages, volatility, and sudden spikes. Because once supply gets tight, the market doesn't negotiate politely. It punishes quickly. Here's the part most people miss. This isn't like ordering extra inventory for a store. Gasoline supply is a moving system. Refining schedules, blending requirements, storage capacity, tanker logistics, pipeline distribution, and daily consumption all interact. When you remove major chunks of refining capacity, you don't get a slow, gentle adjustment. You get a system that starts acting like it's constantly one step away from panic. And that's exactly what analysts are warning about. Section 2, price shock. Forecasts. Why analysts say this could get ugly. Once supply gets constrained, the next question is obvious. How high can prices go? Your script references a USC professor, Michael Misha, who published a study projecting that gas prices could rise 75% from current levels. His modeling estimates prices jumping to $643 per gallon after the Phillips 66 closure and $843 after Valero shuts down. Even if a viewer suspects the decimals are missing, the point of the forecast is crystal clear. Tight supply, plus increased imports, plus specialized fuel requirements, or major price pressure. Then you cite UC Davis economists reaching a similar conclusion, estimating an almost immediate 40-cent increase after the first closure. And then, once the market reaches equilibrium after both refineries close around August 2026, an increase of about 1.21 above current levels. Now let's connect why forecasts vary. Some models assume smoother adjustment, others assume more volatility, and the truth often depends on what happens in the real world. Maintenance shutdowns, accidents, shipping delays, unexpected demand surges, or disruptions overseas. But both studies, different in severity, point the same direction. California is entering a period where higher prices aren't a maybe. They're the logical output of the system. And you can explain it like this on camera. If California was a person, it used to cook most meals at home and occasionally order takeout. After these closures, California is ordering takeout constantly, and the restaurant is across the ocean, has limited delivery slots, and sometimes can't deliver at all. That's not a stable way to run a household or an economy. Section 3, the CARBOB problem. Why California can't just import regular gas. This is where California's situation becomes uniquely dangerous. California does not run on standard gasoline. It requires a special blend called CARBOB, California Reformulated Gasoline Blend Stock for Oxygenate Blending. This is designed to meet California's specific emission standards. That sounds like a technical detail, but it's actually the heart of the crisis, because it means you can't just solve the shortfall by saying, okay, bring in gas from Texas, Louisiana, or the Gulf Coast. Most of that gasoline does not meet California's requirements. So California's fuel has to come from California's remaining refineries, or a limited number of specialized facilities abroad. Your script mentions places like South Korea, India, and Singapore. That creates a choke point. Now imagine the supply chain. A refinery overseas produces CARB-compatible fuel. It's loaded onto an ocean tanker. It crosses the Pacific. It waits for port availability, Los Angeles, Long Beach. It unloads. It enters storage, distribution. It moves through pipelines. It reaches local markets. That is not a quick system. That is a system measured in weeks, not days. And here's the brutal part. Gasoline demand doesn't wait weeks. People fill up today, tomorrow, and the next day. So if there's even a small mismatch between daily demand and daily available supply, prices don't just creep up, they jump. In a system like this, you don't need a major disaster to trigger a shock. You just need a late tanker, congestion at the port, a storm in the Pacific, an unplanned refinery maintenance event, or a surge in summer driving. A system that depends on long-distance imports becomes a system that is naturally more volatile. Section 4. The regulatory timeline. Laws, profit caps, and refiners walking away. Now we get into the political and regulatory domino effect. Your script points to October 2024, when Governor Gavin Newsom signed Assembly Bill 1525. He framed it as fighting price gouging, mandating minimum fuel stock levels, and giving state authority power to define acceptable profit margins. Then came additional moves. SBX 1.2, setting maximum profit margins for refiners ABX 2.1, allowing the state to set minimum inventory requirements and influence when refineries can shut down for maintenance. And then, this is a key dramatic beat for your video. Just 3 days after that signing, Phillips 66 announces it's permanently shutting down its Los Angeles area refinery. That facility produced about 139,000 barrels per day, roughly 8% of California's total refining capacity. Phillips 66 said market dynamics made continued operation economically unfeasible. Then, in April 2025, Valero announced closure of the Benicia refinery effective April 2026, another 145,000 barrels per day. Valero's CEO pointed directly at California's regulatory environment, saying the state's fossil fuel reduction policies and enforcement climate had become the most stringent and challenging in North America, making the required capital investments unjustifiable. Now, regardless of where someone stands politically, you can frame it in a way that's hard to argue with. If you create conditions where a business believes it cannot operate profitably or cannot predict future compliance costs, investment stops first and operations stop next. And refining isn't a business you can pause. Refineries aren't like coffee shops that can shut down and reopen later. Once a refinery closes, the odds of it coming back are close to zero, because the equipment, workforce, permitting, and economics don't restart easily. The shutdown becomes permanent. So when viewers hear 2 refineries closing, they should translate it mentally to 2 major pieces of infrastructure are being removed from the state's survival system. Section 5. The quiet collapse. Hundreds of gas stations already shutting down. Here's where your script widens the crisis beyond refining and into everyday communities. As of January 1st, 2026, your script says approximately 473 to 500 independent gas stations across California have been forced to cease operations, not because of refinery closures, but because of an older state law requiring underground storage tank upgrades. That law, Senate Bill 445, 2014, requiring replacement retrofit of single-walled underground storage tanks to double-walled versions. And the cost is the killer, about $2 million per site when you add tank replacement, piping upgrades, excavation, permitting, and downtime. For a small operator, that's not a business expense. That's a death sentence. You mentioned the state created a support program, RUST, offering loans and grants, but station owners say the aid didn't arrive in time. Now connect the impact clearly for your audience. When stations close, it's not just less convenience. It's longer lines at remaining stations, less competition, higher local prices, and in rural areas, real risk that people can't access fuel quickly. Rural and low-income communities get hit hardest because they often have fewer station options to begin with, and stations in those areas typically operate on thin margins. So even if California solves refinery supply, which is already a huge if, losing hundreds of retail points creates another form of shortage, distribution scarcity, and scarcity always finds its way into the price. Section 6. The ripple effect. Arizona, Nevada, and the Southwest gets dragged. In this story, doesn't stop at the California border. Your script states, Arizona gets about 33% of its gasoline from California refineries. Nevada gets about 88% of its supply from California. That's huge. So if California's system tightens, it doesn't just tighten for Californians. It tightens for the region. You also mentioned that the governors of Arizona and Nevada, Katie Hobbs and Joe Lombardo, sent a joint letter to Newsom in September 2024, warning that California's refinery regulations could trigger shortages and price increases across the Southwest. Newsom dismissed the concerns as oil industry talking points. Then the U.S. Energy Information Administration is referenced, confirming the vulnerability. Arizona, with its own unique gasoline blend, and Nevada receive shipments from California refiners and would likely be affected by reduced regional supply. This is the part your audience needs to feel. Even if someone lives in Phoenix or Las Vegas and thinks, that's California's problem, the pipeline reality says otherwise. When a region's supply hub gets disrupted, nearby states become collateral damage. And here's the cruel twist. Arizona and Nevada have no direct control over the California policies driving the supply change. Yet they pay the price anyway. So this can become a regional political conflict, an economic conflict, and a cost of living conflict at the same time. Section 7, the national security angle, plus the green policy paradox. Now we reach the high-stakes layer. Military readiness, energy security, and unintended consequences. Your script notes, California hosts more than 30 military bases relying on in-state fuel production. These include major Air Force and Army installations, and the refineries provide critical fuel not just for California, but for nearby states too. You also mention the Department of Defense is the world's largest institutional consumer of petroleum, using about 93 million barrels per year on average. 2015-2020. Congressman Vince Fong warned reduced refining capacity could raise prices and affect supply chains, turning a consumer issue into a national security concern. Then there's the geopolitical vulnerability. Assemblymember Stan Ellis warns California already imports about 1/5 of its refined petroleum products, and refinery closures increase dependence on international supply chains. He warns disruptions could be catastrophic, referencing scenarios like geopolitical tensions affecting crude supply and resulting impacts. Now add the green paradox you included, which is powerful if you deliver it cleanly. California's policies are designed to cut emissions, but if California replaces local refining with imported product hauled across the Pacific on tankers burning bunker fuel, global emissions can rise even if California's local accounting looks better. That's the core argument. It may reduce in-state emissions, but increase total emissions worldwide. And you emphasize another uncomfortable truth from your script. Imported fuel may come from refineries operating under environmental standards less strict than California's. So California could end up outsourcing not just production, but pollution. Then bring it back to the kitchen table consequences. High gas prices cascade through everything. Trucking costs go up. Groceries go up. Construction costs go up. Retail prices go up. Business costs rise. Relocation becomes tempting. Jobs move. Tax base erodes. Your script even connects it to population decline and economic migration. When cost of living pressures stack up, housing, taxes, regulation, fuel, people and businesses leave. And once a middle-class family leaves, they rarely come back. Outro, not part of the 7 sections. So here's where we land. California's gasoline future isn't being threatened by one single event. It's being squeezed from multiple directions at once. Refinery capacity shrinking, a special fuel blend that limits domestic alternatives, import dependence that runs on week-long shipping timelines, hundreds of retail stations shutting down, neighboring states exposed, and the possibility that the solution creates new problems in emissions and security. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think California should do first? Relax the CARBOB rules, subsidize remaining refineries, or bet everything on faster EV adoption? Drop your answer in the comments like this. Option 1, 2, or 3, and why? I'll be reading them because your logic matters more than talking points. If this breakdown helped you understand the mechanics behind the headlines, make sure you subscribe to Melissa Gray and share this video with one person who always says, gas prices are just greed, because the reality is a lot more complicated. And if you want, comment part 2 and tell me your city, because I can follow up with a second episode focused on what this means locally, commutes, rural access, and how shortages actually show up in real life. See you in the next one.